Hello.
Hi, how are you?
And what's your name?
Mandy Harvey.
And who's this?
My interpreter.
What's your name?
Sarah.
Nice to meet you, Sarah.
Nice to
How
meet
are
you,
you?
sir.
Hi, Sarah.
Doing well, thank you. Hello.
Okay, Mandy, so I think I've worked this out. So you're deaf?
Yes, I lost all my hearing when I was 18 years old.
Wow. And how old are you now?
29. So it's 10 years.
Wow. And Mandy, how did you lose your hearing, if you don't mind me asking?
I have a connective tissue disorder, so basically I got sick and my nerves deteriorated.
So you were singing before you lost your hearing?
Yeah, I've been singing since I was 4. So I left music after I lost my hearing and then figured out how to get back into singing with muscle memory, using visual tuners and trusting my pitch.
So your shoes are off because you're feeling the vibration. Is that how you're following the music?
Yeah, I'm feeling the tempo, the beat through the floor.
And Mandy, what are you going to sing?
I'm gonna sing a song that I wrote called Try.
Okay, can you tell me what it's about?
After I lost my hearing, I gave up, but I want to do more with my life than just give up. So.
Good for you.
Okay.
Good for you. Okay, well, look, this is your moment, and good luck.
Okay. I don't feel the way I used to. The sky is gray, much more than it is blue. But I know one day I'll get through, and I'll take my place again if I would try. If I would try. Oh, there is no one for me to blame, 'cause I know the only thing in my way is me. I don't live the way I want to. That whole picture never came into view. But I'm tired of getting used to the day. So I will try. So I will try. If I would try. If I would try.
Mandy, I don't think you're going to need a translator for this.
That's Mandy. She was on America's Got Talent in 2017, and she wasn't supposed to be there. She's deaf. How are you supposed to play an instrument? How are you supposed to sing if you're deaf? And yet, there she is. Let me ask you a question. What happens in life when we get more focused on what we can't do than understanding there could be endless possibilities and many different ways to accomplish the goals that are set out before us? But what happens when we get focused on the things we can't do or where we can't go or why we can't go there? There's a term for that out there. It's not a church term. It's a term that's well known in organizations and business world. In fact, the first time I came across this term wasn't a Christian book at all. It was a book that many of you have probably heard of. Many of you even maybe have read, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Maybe you've heard of that book. The term that we're talking about here is a scarcity mindset. You say, well, what is a scarcity mindset? Well, at its core, scarcity mindset focuses more on what you can't do than what is possible out there. In fact, if I had to summarize what a scarcity mindset was in one sentence, I would summarize it as this. I'd say, I can't do this, I don't have blank. And for many of you say, wait a minute, Jason, normally you're very kind and fill in the blanks for us, but you didn't fill in the blank. Because every one of you have your own fill in on this one, don't you? I can't do this. I don't have blank. I don't have enough education. I don't have enough talent. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I'm deaf, or I'm blind, or I have some other thing that's keeping me from accomplishing the dreams that God sets for us. What's your fill-in on the blank here? What's holding you back? Because if we're being realistic with Mandy on there, she had all the excuses in the world, didn't she? In fact, most of us, had she says, I can't sing anymore, I can't perform anymore, most of us would go, yeah, honey, we understand. Man, losing your hearing's a big deal. That's a game changer. I understand. Let's maybe try to find something else for you to do. That's not what Mandy did she? She chose to step back, take a different perspective, and find another way to accomplish her goals. She found a way to break through what most of us would think was impossible. She found a way. And so here's the question for you. What's that impossible thing in your life you can't break through? What's that impossible thing you're struggling with? That thing you look at and it seems insurmountable. If that's our attitude, then we are operating out of a scarcity mindset. Because at our core, we have to believe nothing's impossible to God, right? But all too often, many of us fall into this trap. And it's not just people, but entire organizations, even churches can fall into the scarcity mindset if they're not careful and get more focused on what they can't do and what they don't have than focusing on the enormity of possibilities out there and just taking a step back sometimes and looking at it from a different angle and saying, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's something else we have to consider in this thing. Maybe I just need to look at it differently. And the problem with the scarcity mindset is when folks get trapped in it, they just see the world and life like it's just one big pie. And there's only one pie. And like any other pie, there's only so many pieces in that pie. And so I need to fight for every piece of that pie I can get. And when someone else gets a piece of that pie, that just means less pie for me. And we fight and we struggle rather than seeing maybe there's more than one pie. Maybe there's even other types of pie, like yummy blueberry. Hint, hint. It's my subtle. But we get in the trap, don't we, of thinking, hey, there's only one pie. And I guess I didn't get my piece. So as we've said, scarcity says, and it's our first fill-in, I don't have enough. That's what scarcity says. Scarcity says, I don't have enough. Now, the opposite of scarcity then is to have what we call an abundance mindset. to step back, to see things differently, to reconsider other pathways and other things, to put our faith in God. That's called an abundance mindset, and an abundance mindset believes that there is more of everything in life. There's always more of everything in life. We just need to trust in God at times. Sometimes we just need to look at it differently, put on a different set of lenses, take a step back, reevaluate. Mandy could have just stepped back and given up, but she didn't. Instead, she chose to look at the situation differently, to use her other gifts, her other talents, to even use some things that she has. She used some equipment that helped her with her pitch and her tone, and then she uses the floor to feel the rhythms of what's going on. And she decided, I'm just going to have to come at this thing differently if I'm going to be what I believe I was born to be. I'll never forget a friend many years ago. He used to build computers out of his garage, and he was pretty good at it. And he wanted to, for a living, to build computers and sell them to people. But the problem was, this was at a time when there was already a lot of big players in the industry doing their thing out there. I mean, back then it was Compaq, there was IBM, you had Gateway, you had Dell, you even had Apple playing in the field out there. And all of us knew, listen, they can make computers faster and cheaper than you ever could, man. I don't know if I'd want to dive into that market and try to compete with what we call the big boys. You know what I mean? But instead, he got to meet some doctors and some surgeons. Began talking to them and began to understand, you know what? The computers they need in surgical rooms, those are different than the computers you buy over the counter at the store. They need them to be more robust. They need them to meet sanitary standards. They need to be able to take a little bit of a beating and still survive. They can't have them fail in the middle of a surgery. And so he began to make computers for surgical rooms and for doctors. And he made millions of dollars doing it. Why? He chose to step back, to say that maybe I can't go down that road, but there's other roads. There's other ways to attack this problem. We can innovate. We can be creative. In business, we'd call that a niche, to find my unique thing. What is your unique thing in life? Or are you operating out of a scarcity environment? I don't have enough. I can't do it. Because the problem is this: when you have a scarcity environment, what enters your life is you just become worried. You become anxious. At times it maybe even leads to jealousy or protectionism. There's only so much of the pie and I got to protect mine. And what happens is when you start to make decisions based upon a scarcity mindset, not only does it affect you and your life, but it inevitably affects all those who do life alongside you, not only in your family, but if you are a leader of industry, if you are a manager, if you own a business, whatever it may be, if you approach it with a scarcity environment, that will become your culture. And then everybody's operating out of anxiety and fear and worry and doubt. So we have to ask ourselves, do we operate out of a scarcity environment in our lives? Or do we believe there is more than enough? That it is abundant? We just need to figure out how to use those resources in different ways. I'm going to talk about a story today in John chapter 6 that highlights the scarcity mentality. Because most of us struggle with it. We really do. Particularly as we talked about, we have our human nature and then there's the spiritual in the last few weeks. In our human nature, we tend to lean towards a scarcity mindset. And so we're going to look at a story in John chapter 6. If you have your Bibles today, you can turn there and we'll put it on the screen here in just a moment as well, too. It's a story that many of you know. Jesus feeds the multitude. Best we can tell, it's 5,000 plus people. We don't know exactly what the number is, but I think we'd be okay in saying it's a whole bunch of folks. And in this story, they all meet Jesus and they sit down in an area, and that's where we're going to take up the conversation. So in John chapter 6, verse 1, it says this: Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. And then Jesus went up to a mountainside and he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" And he asked this only to test him. I'm glad it was Philip and not me. You know what I mean? For Jesus already had in mind what he was going to do. And Philip answered him, "It would take more than a half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have," what? "A bite." Not a meal. It would take half a year's wages just for them to get a bite to eat. You see the scarcity mindset here? Right away, he says, there's not enough money. We couldn't possibly come up with enough money. We couldn't possibly do this thing. And he doesn't say it, but you know it's in his mind because they knew where they were out in Galilee area. And he's thinking, and Jesus, we're at least 3 to 4 miles away, probably from the closest town. And we know from archaeological records, most of the towns in that area were only about 3,000 people. It was a rural community that they were in. And so he's thinking, even if we did go to the town, what are the chances they have enough resources to make enough bread for this many people and that there's even enough time to do it? There's no way we can do this thing, Jesus. Do you see the scarcity mindset? And he wasn't the only one. He wasn't the only one that struggled with it. As we continue on in verse 8, it says this. It says, another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up, and he says, here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. Now, if the story had ended right there, Andrew would be the hero. You're like, cool, he get it. He's like, hey, here's some loaves and here's some fish. Jesus, do your thing. Right? Watch this, guys. Unfortunately, though, there's a comma right after fish. And what does he say? He says, but how far will they go among so many? Ugh. Even he's got the scarcity mindset. You see it? I mean, how far really could this bread and this fish go? See, a scarcity mindset, it focuses on what you don't have. And the disciples, they were focused on what they didn't have. And because they didn't have it, the situation seemed impossible to them. What impossible thing in your life are you facing? And are you facing that with a scarcity mindset or with an abundance mindset? I want to talk to you about 5 things, practical things, that kind of highlights that you might struggle with scarcity environment. And these are good, not just in your Christian walk, but for if you're a manager or if you lead a group of people, these are good ones to share with your team as well too. To see if someone struggles with a scarcity mindset. So what are some of those signs, Jason, that I might or someone else might struggle with a scarcity mindset? Well, the first one is this: you compare yourself to others. That's one of the first ones that you know. You know what comparing is? Comparing is focusing on what you are not rather than what you are. And how do you know what you are not? Because you're looking at somebody else. And it's a trap you get into because it's a trap of materialism. You begin to compare yourself to others. You try to compete with others at that point. And now you're keeping up with the Joneses and having to live their life rather than taking a step back and saying, what have I been given? What do I have? And what is God's plan for me to use those resources? We get in the trap of comparing ourselves to other people. And you know what the trap ultimately is in that? You're trying to live their life rather than believing that God uniquely set you aside to live your own story for the kingdom. Don't get in the trap of comparing yourself to others. Here's the second one. You like when others fail. That's a tough one, isn't it? Do you have a hard time celebrating when other people succeed? I mean, they buy that house, right? They get that car. They got that promotion. Do you have a hard time celebrating when someone else succeeds? Because it's a limited pie after all, right? And they got a piece of the pie, I didn't. And I'm not happy as a result. An abundance mindset, on the other hand, celebrates when others succeed because it believes wholeheartedly that when others succeed, we all win. That you are a part of something bigger than yourself. And that our main role isn't to protect our piece of the pie or get as much of that pie as we can. Our main role is to equip and resource people to be everything God created them to be. And when they win, you win. And we all win. Because it's not about us, it's about the kingdom. But do you have a hard time celebrating when others succeed? The third one's a natural result of the first two, and it's this: you're not a team player. You ever had somebody on your team that wasn't a team player? They're not a whole lot of fun. They're competitive. They have to win at all costs. It's survival of the fittest. It's a dog-eat-dog world, isn't it? And because it's a limited pie, I'm going to fight for every piece of that pie. Because I got to get it before you do. But when you live that way, you're not a team player. When you live like that, life's just one big constant competition, and it's more about winning than it is about relationship or anything else in your life. An abundance lifestyle or abundance mindset says we can accomplish more together than we ever could apart. Then when we work together around a common goal and a common vision, we can do more together than we could ever on our own. And that there's multiple pies, and there's multiple ways to make pies. And it just sees things from a bigger perspective. The fourth one we've kind of highlighted a little bit already throughout our talk today, and that is you're full of excuses. That's a natural result of the scarcity mindset. It's built right into the very definition. I can't do this because I don't have blank, right? And those are our excuses. I can't do it because I don't have enough money. I don't have enough resources. I don't have enough time. I have some kind of physical or mental disability that will keep me from doing this thing. And what happens, though, when we get in that trap and we have a scarcity mindset and we get locked in more about what we can't do than what we can do, and when we start making more and more excuses about it, we then start entering what we call a victimization mode. You become a victim, right? I can't do it, I don't have it, so woe is me. I think I'll just give up. You weren't created to be a victim. The Christian walk in particular is one of victory. Because in the Christian walk, the center message of everything we do is Jesus is risen. And because Jesus is risen, because he conquered the grave, because he burst through the impossible, he can take that impossible thing in your life and he can kill it off and it can be alive in him. There's nothing impossible for God. But when we get trapped in excuses, we become victims. And we live a life like we are a victim. The last one is you ignore long-term goals. You see, when you have a scarcity mentality and you have all these other things in your life, you're fighting for what's yours. You're living day by day. It's a survival to get that piece of pie. I need to get what's mine. And so you have this short-term vision of just surviving one more day to get what you need, one more day to compete against somebody else, one more day because I deserve it, I've earned it, it's mine. But the problem is this, it's a trap. Instead, we were created to put long-term goals out there. Do you have long-term goals in your life? Do you have long-term financial goals? Do you have long-term career goals? Or are you just living day by day, surviving? See, the part about long-term goals is you put this target up on the wall and you start throwing your darts at it. And the reality is this: life has its ups and downs. Life has its good seasons and its bad seasons, and it has a tendency to throw curveballs and storms at us constantly through life. But when we have a long-term vision, when we have long-term goals, even when the storms of life come out and things don't always turn out the way we think they should, we keep throwing our darts at the long-term goal. We stay focused on where we're going and where we've been called, and inevitably we get there. It's about trajectory, and it's about movement towards that goal. But I have to ask you, do you have long-term goals? Or do you suffer with a scarcity mindset that says, I just need to survive and get my piece of the pie? How are you doing on those things? Because we've been called to live lives of abundance. And listen, abundance is a state of mind. I get it. What does that look like then, Jason? What really does an abundance mindset look like? And I love this verse out of 2 Corinthians 9, verse 8. This is an amazing verse. It says this: and God is able to bless you. What is that, Radiant? Say it with me. One more time. God is able to bless you. Abundantly. Yeah, God is able to bless you abundantly. But I'm going to stop right there, because here's the question. Do you believe that? Wrestle with that one a minute. I mean, do you really believe that in your heart of hearts? God is able to bless you abundantly. That is the key to an abundance mindset right there. Do you believe at the core God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. You say, why are you enunciating all those words, Jason? But do you see, I can read this. We talk about our flesh nature, our earthly nature. Let me tell you how I read this in my fleshly, earthly nature. And God's able to do many things and bless me sometimes, so that in some of the things, some of the time, maybe having most of what I need, I'll get some good stuff and most good works. Right? How many of us are guilty of reading it that way sometimes, if we're being really honest out there, right? That's not what it says. That's not even close to what it says. God is able to bless you abundantly. Where? In all things. When? At all times. Having some of what you need? No, all that you need. You will abound in every good work. This is the sort of verse in your Bible I encourage you to highlight, underline, write in the margins, circle, do whatever you need to do. This is one of those big ones. Put it on your dresser, put it on your fridge, write it somewhere you can see it several times. But you're going to have to wrestle with that top sentence. Do you believe God is able to bless you abundantly? Gets us to our so what moment. And we go back to that story in John chapter 6. After reading that verse right there, we see in John 6, verse 11, it says, Jesus then took the loaves and he gave thanks. And he distributed to those who were seated. How much? As much as they wanted. Did you see that? Not as much as they needed, or not enough to where they're not hungry. It was a snack, thanks, Lord. As much as they wanted. And he did the same thing with the fish. You see, the disciples had a scarcity mindset, and Jesus is saying, oh, you have no idea. And it forces us to ask the question, do you truly believe God is enough? In our lives, an abundance mindset makes us ask that. Do you believe that God is enough, because in our earthly human nature, we're going to oftentimes have a scarcity mindset, and we have to work on that, and we have to focus on that, because God is saying, I am much more and can do much more than you ever imagined. Can you have an abundance mindset and know that I want to bless you abundantly? As a pastor, particularly maybe in the last 14 months or so, I want you to know that I have led you with a scarcity mindset. And I'm not happy about it. And I'm sorry. It's been really convicting for me as we backed up into this story. Because I know right when it started, and many of you were here and remember there was a 2 Decembers ago, I had to basically stand up in front of everybody and go, we ain't got enough money to pay the bills and pay payroll. I mean, we're broke. And I doubted, only to see Radiant step up and give the largest giving month they've ever given in the history of Radiant. How awesome is that? And didn't end there. They followed up the next December and beat that one. I saw this scarcity mentality just the other night when we were at the volunteer appreciation dinner. It was such a small thing, but you realize, oh no, this has been going on a while and it's even crept into the small things. Because I remember looking at Bob Larson and first off, we were going to be at Teen Challenge, and I thought, my goodness, this place is out in the middle of blessed nowhere. And it is out in the middle of blessed nowhere. And it's on a Sunday night. Long week for everybody. It's the start of the week. Nobody's going to show up to this thing. I mean, Bob planned on about 60 people, maybe 70. Only to have 88, 89 people show up, and we're pulling out tables and plates to accommodate them, and we had the room full. I don't know that we'd have put very many more people in the room at that point. You say, that doesn't seem like a big deal. Oh yeah, you see the scarcity mindset in that? Only this many will show up. And I thought back to many different things. I mean, it goes back to something as simple as faith in action last fall. And I remember thinking, you know what? We've just gone through a really tough season. I had to make some tough decisions last spring and summer to get the organization pointed a certain direction, to get it going where I think God's leading us to go. And I'm like, you know what? It's Labor Day weekend. I'm guessing only about 90 to 100 people are going to show up to this thing. So let's create projects, things for that. Only to have 140 plus people show up. Y'all keep doing that to me. Thank you. You see the scarcity mindset in that? The whole Haiti thing. God has blessed us so enormously in that. I'm so proud of y'all. I'm so thankful to God for that. But through it, I had my doubts. I had my questions. I was operating out of scarcity mindset. I mean, even when we first started talking about Fritz and bringing him in, I remember they're like, well, we want to bring Fritz in. We need to get him an airline ticket and take care of some stuff. And I'm like, that's not in our budget, y'all. We said this year we're going to be tight on our budget and we're going to get financially healthy. And right there, I'm thinking about what we don't have. But okay, bring him in. We'll figure out a way to do this. And we brought him in and he spoke. It was wonderful. We even said, you know what? Hey, we're going to take up a love offering. And I said, great. Radiant is a generous church. I bet we can probably send him home with $1,500, $1,600. And I'm looking forward to that. And in the end, we sent him home with over $3,000. And he was able to buy a refrigerator, a gas stove, and pillows for the orphans. Yeah, thank God, not me. And then we said, hey, let's send them the orphans some presents for Christmas. And I'm thinking, okay, I think maybe we've got enough people to get 28, 30 gifts out to them. And by the time all the ornaments were off the tree, people were looking at me going, do you have any more? And we knew to send them over there, it was going to cost a lot of money. It cost almost over $1,000 to ship that stuff over there. But we wanted them to have something in their hand on Christmas morning. But my first mindset was, where's that money coming from? And not only did we get him over there, but then we were able to send him $800 more after Christmas Eve to bless him. Oh, but it doesn't end there. I want you to know just how bad I am. And then we've got a missions team heading out to Haiti. And they're like, well, I think we want to start collecting for that around January and February. I'm like, are you crazy after all that we just did? We're going to keep asking? I'm like, okay, well, here we go. We'll dive into that thing, and you know what? I'll supplement it out of the budget or something if we don't get all the funds for that. We'll figure out a way to make this work. And today I stand before you, and they are fully funded and ready to go on the trip. Over $7,000. But don't forget, suddenly I remembered I'd made a pledge to Sierra Leone for $1,500. I'm thinking, oh, come on. Not in the middle of all this. I'm like, all right, we'll talk about it, but we'll see how it goes. And about 3 days ago, Barb wrote a check to the Sierra Leone Initiative for $1,869. You blew it out of the water by $360. I don't want to lead that way anymore. I don't want to leave or lead you with a scarcity mindset, fearful of where things are going to come from, afraid and worrying and having anxiety about it. I choose today to lead this church and say, God is able to bless us abundantly. And I want you to think the same. There's going to be times then if we're going to go this road, if we're going to nod our heads and say we're going to believe this, there's going to be times we're going to be looking at a multitude of 5,000 people with some loaves and some fish going, what do we do? All right? I'm just telling you, it's coming. Jesus said he did it to test Philip. Don't think you're going to escape the test. I want us in that moment to answer and believe that God is going to bless us and bless whatever that thing is abundantly, and not have a scarcity mindset, not worry, not be anxious, and not be afraid. Amen? That's what I'm calling us to, because 8 years ago this church was started because some people believed there was a need for a church on the east side that preaches the gospel in a modern way. And listen, I talk to church planters all the time. Des Moines on a lot of people's radar screen. Why? Because it's the fastest growing city in the Midwest. A lot of church planters look this direction. But you know what? When I talk to them, do you have any idea what areas they're talking about? West Des Moines, a little bit north. Nobody wants to touch the east side. Just FYI. And it has been that way forever. And I get it. It's easy in the scarcity mindset to look out there. I've been to some of the churches on the west side and everything out. They're shinier. They're more polished. I'm telling you, they are. And it's easy for us to get in a mindset that says, listen, they have more resources and better things. There's no way we can accomplish what we need to accomplish. That's a scarcity mindset, and I rebuke that. Rather than taking a step back and saying, God has put us in the right place at the right time to do amazing things. And so here's my question. Are you ready to get back on mission and believe that we're put here at this time to make a difference, not only on the east side, but through Des Moines, and not worry about the resources and where things are coming from, and instead be completely focused on the fact that people need to be introduced to Jesus, whatever it takes and wherever God sends us? Can you do that? But to do that, we're going to have an abundance mindset, which believes anything is possible with God. And if you're going to experience his blessing in your life, you've got to have that mindset as well too. And if we have that together, who knows where God can take us? Let's pray. Dear Lord, may we never operate out of scarcity, fearful, anxious. May we instead believe that you want to bless us abundantly in all things, at all times, in every good work. May we live with that hope. And And Lord, if there's areas we need to look at in our lives and say, I might be operating out of scarcity mentality, show it to us so that we can break free and be everything you created us to be and more. In your name, amen.